Good morning. For those of you who are actually watching at this early hour, it's about 6 o'clock in the morning, or earlier time than I would normally be broadcasting, but I'm on my way to a production shoot. I'm going to be busy all day and figure I might as well take advantage of this long drive I got ahead of me to talk a little bit about some things I wanted to talk to and haven't gotten to this week. So I hope you guys are all doing well. This is, of course, the week before the Super Bowl, and it's kind of calm before the storm. We got the Pro Bowl coming up this week. What's up? Some of you guys are awake out there. Laser Eclipse, Lone Raven, Wolf Bro. Not Lamar, they ask? I'm going to get to that in a second. But yeah, so it's Pro Bowl week, and I'm going to give you some thoughts about the Pro Bowl. But first, let's get to this story. So PFF, which is Pro Football Focus, they're the entity that does all the very meticulous grading of players week to week. They have all the metrics and all the data, and they rank every player and team. They have all kinds of measurements and stats to determine, how good a player is and how effective they are at that position. And they rank them based on all these metrics and metadata, data and all this kind of stuff that they use to gauge. So recently, Pro Football Focus announced their selection for the MVP. Obviously, there's a twist coming here, because if it was Lamar Jackson, there wouldn't be much of a story to tell. But it was not Lamar Jackson. I'll tell you who was number 2, which will surprise you, and then I'll tell you who number 1 is. I'm sure you know where I'm going with this. Good morning, Jessica, all the way from Alaska. How are you? So, surprisingly, at number 2 in what they determined to be the MVP was Dak Prescott, and at number 1 was Russell Wilson. So, for those of you who are Seahawks fans like myself, been following Seahawks all season long, know that this is no surprise. This is, by definition of what an MVP is Russell Wilson. Now let me just clarify, this PF Pro Football Focus announcement has no bearing on what the actual MVP, formal winner will be determined this week, announced later this week. It's going to be Lamar Jackson. We all kind of know that, but if you really want to break it down and kind of see what what makes sense by the definition of most valuable player, PFF, if you want to look at it in more detail, you can find their article about it. It goes into all these descriptive metrics, but they talk about wins against replacement, kind of determining how many wins does that player bring to the team by being on the team. And so it doesn't look at how exciting a player is, or what necessarily what stats they performed, or statistically how great they were in a particular category, but more about their value to the team. What is their value in terms of what difference would they have made had they not been on the team? And that, to me, is really what it's all about. It's about most valuable means the team that would be the worst off if that player wasn't on the team. And they determined that Russell Wilson was far and away the most valuable player for their team this year, 2019. And I think for us who have watched the Seahawks closely, we know how much Russell Wilson had to lift his team up, because they were just, we had so many games that were so close, and so many times where nothing was working. Our defense wasn't getting stops. It hasn't been able to really get stops when they needed to get stops. And the running game, while successful at times, has been pretty bad, especially when you lose all your running backs at the end. So Russell Wilson had to basically single-handedly save this team and try to keep it going, and managed to do so to to end up with a 11-5 record and a playoff berth, make it to the divisional championship, and really should have made it to the NFC championship. And had we done a couple of other things, we would have been hosting a playoff game and would have been the number 3 seed, if not for 2 inches. So, that being said, I think with Russell Wilson, with him this year, we had all that done with an 11-5 record. I'm convinced that had he not been on the team, and we had whatever, Geno Smith, or we had somebody else, who is our backup, by the way, if he had somebody else in his place, we would probably have been a 500 at best team, probably below that, given the way our season went. We could have been 4-12, 5-11, or something like that. So, by the way, I'm passing the Seahawks practice facility to my left over here. You can actually see the 12 flag barely lit up. I don't think you'll be able to see it though. Many people there. Obviously, the Seahawks are off-season now, getting ready for the Pro Bowl. So that's just, I think, the fact that it comes from Pro Football Focus, the folks who do this sort of analysis, the fact that they made that an announcement, to me, verifies what we've all known all along, that this team, without Russell Wilson, would just, who knows where they'd be. They'd definitely be much lower in the NFC West and in the entire NFL for that matter. So they need to build around that, and I think Russell Wilson, in his kind of exit interview, I think showed a little bit more expression about his disappointment in the end of the season, and that they need to be better. They need to finish better. Russell Wilson's never going to come out and say he's mad at anybody or will not ever blame anybody, but I think he's definitely feeling that window, like this is his prime window right now, and every year when you're in your prime, you want to take advantage of that, because that window eventually closes up, and then you're not the player that you once were. It's the reality, especially as a mobile quarterback as he is. So I'm sure he's feeling that, that urgency. But really, when you think about it, the unfortunate part was we had a window there where Seattle's the best team in the NFC West. 49ers were down, Rams were down, the Cardinals were down, and we should have had back-to-back Super Bowls. We know that. And with the once that window passed, when we won our first one, lost the second one, we still had ownership of the NFC West. But since that time, obviously, things have changed. The Cardinals were, for a while, they kind of were at the top, made it to Super Bowl, or almost made it to Super Bowl 50, getting knocked out in the championship round. And then things started to change, and then the Rams started to rise, and the Rams are kind of dropping, and now, of course, the 49ers are the big bully on the block now. And so Wilson probably sees that, because he realizes, the 49ers, they're a team that they're going to be tough for a while. They're going to be around, and, the rivalry's back, which is great, but, the 49ers took advantage of the fact that when they were bad, and they were bad for a good stretch there, obviously the advantage to being bad is that it gives you great drafting opportunities, and they were able to really build up their defense. That defensive line is something else, and so now they're starting to, obviously this season, bearing the fruits of that time. So now we've got to deal with the 49ers being a challenge again for probably a while. So we're gonna have to do the same thing, and it's tough. You, as a team that makes the playoffs every year, you don't get access to that top tier draft, players in the draft. you're just not going to get up there. You know, those teams that the whole idea is that was how it's meant to be. That obviously the draft, the teams that do poorly get rewarded by getting higher draft options. And this year, the Cincinnati Bengals have the #1 draft pick, and most likely we will get that quarterback at LSU this year, since they're kind of in that position now where they're looking to fill a position of need now. So that can turn a team's, you know, momentum quite, you know, instantly with the right draft pick. But Seattle's not going to get up, not going to get there. They're not going to get those top guys. We'll be drafting at the low end of the first round again, and most likely we'll probably move out of it and try to get more draft picks as they usually always do. But we'll talk about the draft closer to that time. We've got free agency to deal with in the meantime, but that's coming up. We got free agency deadline in March. A lot of guys we got to make determinations on. Jerron Reed, Jadeveon Clowney, just to name a couple of the, you know, visible, you know, free agent players who we'll be keeping an eye on to see what happens to those guys. But as far as the, you know, the Pro Bowl this week, we got Russell Wilson and Bobby Wagner were our two, you know, starting representatives. They this a few days ago they announced that Shaquille Griffin got moved up to the Pro Bowl, which is nice. It's a great honor that he gets to make. I think it's his second one, which is cool. It's a nice reward for, I thought, a pretty good season for Shaquille. And obviously the reason he got moved in there is because, you know, another player moved out, so his spot opened up, so he got to get in there. So I think it was Lattimore. I think he was one who was supposed to be in the starting spot, but anyway, Shaquille gets it. The Pro Bowl. Oh, and Bobby Wagner was, you know, the defensive representative for the Seahawks, and he actually stepped down and said he needs to take care of some injuries and recoup his body. He doesn't want to put any more at risk for this game. And the Pro Bowl, to me, this is my feeling about the Pro Bowl. All right, I'm not a big fan of the Pro Bowl. They've tried to make this game as compelling as possible, but the reality is they're never going to be able to make it like a real football game because it's too much at stake. These guys who are there, you're in the Pro Bowl because you're one of the top players. So obviously you have a lot of high contracts. My whole thing on the Pro Bowl, I don't care who wins, I don't care who does what. I just pray the whole time if I got Seahawks players in there, is please don't get injured for this game. Because can you imagine if a player, doesn't matter what team, you know, what team your player's from, imagine if your player from your team is playing in the Pro Bowl and they get some kind of devastating injury. I mean, it'd kill your season, you know, for this stupid game that means nothing. And so that's why you watch a lot of these guys not really hitting that hard, you know, the linemen aren't really doing anything crazy. They're just sort of waltzing around and pushing around with each other, but, you know, so it's kind of, you know, it's hard to really get excited about it. I think just the fact that you got selected to the Pro Bowl is good enough. You know, you don't even have to play the game. Maybe they should make it flag and just like take their helmets off and do that instead. Of course, you can still tear an ACL running around with shorts and t-shirts on. But anyway, and that's what it might take. It might take one game where one of the top players in the league gets a major injury, and they'll finally decide, you know what, let's forget it. The Pro Bowl's not worth it. But for now, it's going on. It happens this weekend. I will not be watching it. I'm going to be traveling. I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. So I'll be mildly curious just to see how it turns out, but I really don't. It's not compelling enough. It's the. Well, you didn't make the Super Bowl, so we'll let you enjoy this. So, and Pete Carroll gets to coach the NFC, which is fun. I watched a little video clip of him. They're showing a little behind the scenes of him in a team meeting. He was doing his rah-rah type speech, and they're doing some shoot-arounds like they do in Seattle film room. They were doing the same thing, a little shootout competition with the NFC players. That's cool, you know. And I guess that one positive thing with Pete Carroll getting to coach the NFC is that, maybe it's the chance for him to do a little recruiting. They get to know him a little bit better, and maybe some free agents out there, players might be kind of thinking, hey, I kind of enjoy playing for this guy. So perhaps maybe something like that good can come out of this Pro Bowl experience. But we'll see. See how the game turns out. But that's just, I think the other stuff that happens during the week, the throwing competitions with the quarterbacks, the dodgeball game, that stuff's actually more interesting because it's not something you see every day, and you don't have expectations of what it's going to look like. As opposed to a football game, you know what it should look like, and then you watch it and you go, this doesn't look like a real game. When something's off here. Oh yeah, they're not trying. They're not trying to kill each other. Anyway, speaking of not trying to get killed in the game anymore, a couple of guys retired within the last week. Yesterday, Eli Manning announced his retirement from the NFL after playing 16 seasons with the Giants. Now, personally, I've never been a big fan of Eli Manning. He did that thing where touted about being drafted by the Chargers and basically didn't want to play there, so he kind of essentially made the whole thing played out. But he did end up with the Giants, and I'd say the only thing that one guy in the Patriots side, 2 additional Super Bowl notches on their belt, particularly that season that they went their first loss of that season, and that was, of course, the David Tyree helmet catch game where they eventually scored a final touchdown, and the Patriots couldn't come back, and the Giants won. And they were one of those teams that came up for a wild card to win the Super Bowl. And he did it again. That was in 2007. He did it again in 2011. So 2-time Super Bowl winner. Really, it wasn't that outside in the postseason. They were, I think, 8-4. The regular season, he was like 117 and 117. I mean, a pretty average, regular season quarterback. He wasn't dominant in terms of wins and losses, but I think he'll always be remembered for what he did to the Patriots in the Super Bowls and for their postseason runs. So that's pretty cool. So congratulations to Eli Manning on a good career. It was time. He obviously had been kind of dropping over the last years. The Giants haven't been very good, and he finally got benched this past year. And I think that obviously the writing was on the wall that his time was done in New York, and he didn't want to take that option of playing at some other place, and being some backup or starting over with a new team. I was never like that, when a great player who you only really know being on one team, and then phone falling off this thing, and then they go have this sort of finish to that you totally forget, about, like, oh yeah, I forgot he played on that team. And Franco Harris was on the Seahawks at one point. Don't know if you guys knew that. It's crazy to think, but yeah. There have been other examples. Quarterbacks who, like Joe Montana, 49ers legend, played with the Kansas City Chiefs for a stretch, at the end of his career. So Eli Manning doesn't go that route, so he hangs it up after 16 years. And congratulations to him. Didn't talk about it last week, but Luke Kuechly, linebacker for the Carolina Panthers, announced his retirement last week, and he's been those are considered the 2 best middle linebackers in the NFL. Luke Kuechly, still young enough to play, but I think he'd had several concussions. Obviously, his body had just gone through a lot of rough spots, and he made a pretty emotional announcement that he was hanging it up, that his body was telling him it's time to quit. And it's pretty sad, especially a player who's as good as he is. You know, it's kind of like Andrew. It reminded me a lot about the Andrew Luck retirement at the beginning of this year, where it was just simply mind wanted to, but the body was just had enough. And eventually, all players go through that. Maybe quarterback is the one you don't. You know, I just give the example of Andrew Luck. He just had bad luck. He looked bad luck, unfortunately. Stuff that he went through, but you know, it's been such a valuable commodity being able to stay healthy all these years. It's hard to do. And even at the quarterback position that's so protected, it is still very to, you know, keep your body healthy day in, day out. Week in, week out, year in, year out. So, yeah, a couple players leaving the NFL. And now we've got, well, we'll see what happens next, but we got a whole bunch of quarterbacks, potentially free agents, that we'll have to see what teams decide to do with Drew Brees, Tom Brady, Phillip Rivers, Jameis Winston, all teams that at this point, you know, are, you know, they're kind of at that point where teams got to make a decision. Do they stick with these guys, or franchise that, you know, is looking for, you know, someone, a veteran quarterback who can take their team that next level in the next year or two. It's gonna be fun. I haven't seen, you know, the quarterbacks. These are guys who've been on teams for, you know, pretty much their whole careers. Eli opted not to, so now Tom Brady has been asked many times, "Are you going to retire?" So it'll be interesting to see just the idea of Tom Brady, you know, playing for another team. Just seeing him wearing another team's jersey would be wild if it comes to that. But a lot to be determined in the next couple months. So we'll see, but I'm almost to my destination here, so we'll talk to you guys soon. We got the Super Bowl in a couple of weekends, a week from Sunday. I will be doing my usual viewing party out of my usual away spot at Emerald Downs. So if you're in the area, come and join us. We're going to be giving away a bunch of cool prizes, 50-50 raffle. Someone a lot of money last time. There's a lot of people, and we have a 55-inch HD TV that we're giving away to a lucky winner. Who will be coming to the party. So if you can't come down, just join my live stream. I'll be doing that live, reacting to the Super Bowl as it happens. You'll see City or the 49ers. Kansas City are early 1.5-point favorites, I think. I think you know who I'm going to be rooting for. So we'll see what happens in that game. But thanks you guys for watching. Hope you guys do the subscribe thing and check out some of my other videos here at the end of this. And I'll talk to you guys soon. Have a good week. Go Hawks.